Why did you and your ex break up? She brought a guy home with her one evening and told me I had an hour to pack my and get out. I reminded her that the lease was in my name, not hers. Imagine the look of shock when I told her to get out. She seen my kindness towards her as a weakness she could exploit. I was very forgiving of her bad habits, and she pushed to the point where she obviously thought I would let her stay in my apartment if she told me to get out. In hindsight, being that forgiving was my fault. She cheated on me with a convicted pedophile, then she left me for the pedophile. We have 3 kids together and, unsurprisingly, they all live with me. A regular at my girlfriend's job had the exact same thing happen. She came home from work and vented the situation to me because she was so disturbed and sad for the guy and his kids. I don't really know what to say, but I hope you and your kids are happy and thriving. I found pictures of her banging some other dude in our bed while I was gone for work. 5 years of my life down the drain. Don't worry though, was painful at first but ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. Got me out of an unhealthy relationship with someone who clearly didn't really love me and freed me up to meet the real love of my life, who I just proposed to. I didn't have my together yet and was selfish and unreliable. She thought she deserved better, and back then, she was right. I've come a long way since then. I didn't have my together and I thought she deserved better, so I broke it off. She tried fighting for me for 2 years but suddenly got married. Several unsuccessful relationships later, I'm still single and still don't have my together, and she is in an awful marriage, and I feel terrible for her. I took her for granted. She got fed up. I'm also a she that got fed up of being taken for granted, but I'd forgive him if he offered me an honest apology. Hell, I'd take him back if he really showed me that he cares. What I'm saying is, if she's not in a new relationship and you still love her, you might try and reach out. Life is too short. She said she would herself if I left. I stayed and began to resent her and slowly push her away. She cheated. We broke up. It sounds harsh, but the best thing you can do against that threat is to immediately break up. You don't want to be dealing with that kind of guilt-inducing manipulation in a relationship. You're not responsible for their mental health, or at least not solely responsible. And staying in a relationship you don't want to be in only because you are essentially being threatened is not a fun way to live. My ex-wife filed for divorce to teach me a lesson, thinking I would try to stop the divorce. She was piping mad when I didn't though. Oh man, my husband used to do this all the time. One day I shrugged and said go ahead, headed upstairs and started packing a bag for my daughter and I. He threatened to sue for full custody and I laughed in his face. I told him to point to where the extra diapers were, where I keep her pants, or how to feed her breakfast. He couldn't answer any of those things. We ended up doing couples therapy and are much happier. But I'll never forget his face when I just calmly shrugged him off instead of begging him to not leave us or take my baby. My ex and I were together for 14 years and it was a magical time. However, once the pandemic hit, he took up smoking crystal meth at home while I was away at work all day. He became absolutely addicted, stopped taking his schizophrenia medication, and the psychosis and paranoia took over. Living with him became a horrific nightmare I wouldn't wish on anyone. I tried everything to get him help, but he wouldn't budge or acknowledge the depths of his despair. After 5 months living with this madman who was once my best friend and partner in life, I had to move out and start my life all over from scratch. I still can't believe how quickly it all unraveled. Now he's homeless and living downtown in some bushes in a park. That's awful and so damn heartbreaking. I broke up with my last boyfriend because I found out he had been smoking fentanyl while I was at work class. I gave him 1,000 chances to go get help. I tried to help him. I really did. Now he's dead. Sometimes I think, maybe, if I had stayed with him, he'd be alive. But I know if I had actually stayed, he would have died anyway since he wasn't stopping, and then I'd feel worse for enabling him. Some people need rock bottom to get better. I'm glad you got out when you did. 3 months of long distance. She gave me a summary of her week via text. I spent the first few weeks trying to engage in conversation only to be ignored for another summary. I spent the next few months asking if we could just enjoy casual messages that flowed in a natural conversation to mimic how we spoke when we were in the After 2 months of not being listened to, I called her up and broke it off. For some reason, she was surprised. I took time off from work to take care of her parents. Her mom died, and it hit her hard. I continued taking care of her dad, but she was so stressed she would go out with her daughters and friends from work to de-stress. After 2 years of staying at her parents' house 24/7 and right before her dad died, she told me I was a godsend and she wanted a divorce. She locked me out of our house and had the attorney she was working with declare I had abandoned it so she could keep everything. Turned out her nights with our daughters and with her friends were actually with her boyfriend. She got the house and the inheritance and a new boyfriend. I got nothing. We lost a child and grieved in very different ways. He went back into active military duty and was gone 18 months. I developed an addiction to sleeping pills and alcohol. When he came home, we started divorce proceedings and he returned to the military. I checked in a rehab center and we went our separate ways. We grew as people but in different directions, and the things we once connected over were no longer relevant. We've been married for 13 years, got a 10-year-old daughter. Once as we both turned 40-42, we realized that each of us thought she or he sacrificed his or her life for another, trying to make out some happiness. But it was nothing. A way we tried, we thought me or she would be happy, but appeared that we were living in a world of illusions. We talked much and revealed we have only few things in common, no passion, no feelings, just good companions in life. We didn't cheat, we tried not to lie and be the best partners, but seems like both just lived their own dream. I was totally devastated as I understood I have no family in my understanding. My wife doesn't want me, she never felt confident enough with me financially. The whole concept of a family was wrong. The worst thing, we have a daughter we both adore, and we don't know what to do, split up or try to make it all over again. I do realize that also could lead another life, another woman at least, and now it's wasted. We both made a wrong choice once these years back. Wasn't ready for a relationship at all. Came into it with a lot of baggage. I hated many aspects of myself, had no self-esteem or confidence. We were in uni and matched via Tinder, so it's not like I had to put in actual work to pursue her. Long story short, I became overwhelmingly attached and really put her on a pedestal. There was a whole lot of love bombing as well. She finally got suffocated with my nonsense and jumped ship after 3 months. I took the breakup horribly, and for about 3 to 4 years, I remained in a really bad state with even worse baggage as a result of how I perceived the breakup. One day, I faced some really strong marijuana and decided to reflect on the past. All the reasons for the breakup became clear, and I started to see why she felt the way she did. I've since then improved myself and can finally say I am now slightly above the baseline amount of confidence, self-esteem. Was most deep into the negatives before. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not easy to date, anxiety, bad past dating experiences. I'd been cheated on twice before, so naturally I like to keep new partners at arm's length at first because I'm aware I have a tendency to go all in early in a relationship. My ex was also the kind who moves quickly. We were officially an exclusive couple 2 weeks after we first talked. A week after that, about 3 weeks since we'd met, she said, "I love you," and I did my best to explain that as much as I cared for her then, I felt like it was a tad bit too fast. By this time, I'd already told her about the being cheated on part. She then proceeded to use it against me, saying that I was just letting past traumas affect me and that I had no trust in her. I gave in and said it back. Moments later, thinking maybe I had been wrong to be hesitant. From there, the relationship dynamic was like that. Every time I didn't do exactly what she wanted, I'd end up thinking it was my fault for not being trusting enough, and that I had to prove myself to her. I was slipping back into old habits, allowing myself to invest too much, telling myself that it was fine because I was just showing that I was committed and that I was past my bad experiences or something. I slowly started hanging out less with friends, skipping on workouts, all because she would ask me to spend more time with her. Not a fan of who I was becoming when we were together. We'd been in a committed relationship for 7 years. We were both in our 40s, and we had a plan to get married after her last child finished college, which would take another 7 years. She lost patience, found another guy who said he wanted to get married again much sooner, and she ended it with me. Spoiler alert, they got engaged about 1.5 years later. but apparently he wouldn't agree to a date for the wedding. After being engaged for over 4 years, she finally figured out that he lied about wanting to get married. They broke up about the time we originally planned to get married. She took advantage of me. She used me, especially after her father died. I tried moving her away from where she was to help her start a new and improved life. She was addicted to meth but said she'd stop for us, and it was just to deal with the trauma of her father passing. 2 was working 80100-hour weeks and came home to her cheating on me. Then I found out it was with multiple people on multiple occasions. She had her first time with me. After she got comfortable with, she became hyperual, which was awesome for a minute, until she would just regularly express her interest in just about anyone else, despite never cheating on me. It absolutely destroyed my self-worth and self-esteem, and eventually destroyed the relationship. Afterwards, she felt the need to inform me about her hoe phase, in which she had unprotected with several men like a week after leaving me. I didn't eat for days after hearing that. She went to Hawaii for a girls' weekend, came back and told me she wants to focus on her career without worrying about me, and broke it off after for years. She probably cheated on me. She started seeing me as a burden when applying to jobs because she kept considering my opportunities alongside hers. We weren't right for each other anyway, so it's cool. Just as to have something last for 4 years and then end so suddenly kinda ruined my outlook on dating and commitment, so I haven't been in a relationship since then. My ex thought it would be fun to surprise me to tell me she was 2 months pregnant. To elaborate, we had met at a bar and I thought she was gorgeous. Our mutual friend got us talking. We ended up drinking too much whiskey and going back to her place. Got mildly snowed in, so we a long weekend getting to know each other and really clicked. A few weeks later, she's making all sorts of future plans for us, which I thought was cute. I was falling really fast after a string of unsuccessful tries at dating after a painful divorce from my wife of 17 years. She dropped the L-bomb first and I was done after that. Introduced her to my kids and thought things were going well. She ended up going to a friend's wedding and I guess that's where it happened. Started acting strange after that, kinda frigid. Dropped the baby bomb on me sometime later and I could do the math and science quick enough. Looking back on some of our conversations, I think she just really wanted a baby to fill a painful hole in her heart from childhood trauma. I'm not sure exactly what role she intended for me to play in this, but when I didn't react accordingly, she got extremely nasty, telling me I never meant anything to her and I was overreacting. I wished her the best and asked her not to contact me further. Our mutual friend says she seems to be doing well, baby is happy and healthy, and I'm glad for her even though it hurt me so bad at the time. I could never forgive her, but I really hope she found what it is she was looking for. Live and learn, I suppose. Apparently, I was the love of her life. She couldn't bear the thought of not being with me, and she'd just die if I ever cheated on her, right up until she casually announced she was leaving me for one of the 2 guys she'd been in behind my back. And I should just shut up and get over it, because it's not like we were at all serious or anything. Since this is getting so much attention, the punchline is that she can't have babies because her toxic soul must have poisoned her ovaries or something. Meanwhile, I've got 3 brilliant overachieving kids who wouldn't have existed if I was still with her. He is a man-child who refuses to take any sort of accountability for his life. He considered I don't know how to be a valid excuse for not doing something that he could have learned, and wanted me to drive him everywhere because he was afraid to drive, despite there being a bus stop 3 short blocks from our house. Eventually, his helplessness overshadowed his good qualities and I couldn't take it anymore. I started viewing him as a teenager and wasn't attracted to him anymore. He moved back with his mom, who treats him like crap, and I'll be surprised if he ever leaves, going on 2 years now. The others aren't even worth mentioning, so I'll speak about my last ex-girlfriend. We ended things on amicable terms, as she couldn't give me the attention she felt I deserved. It was a tough time for her, and in hindsight, I wasn't ready for the commitment she required. She's a remarkable woman and one of my best friends. She actually introduced me to a friend of hers, kept pestering me to ask her out. Glad I did. We got married this month. Bless her heart. Spent our whole relationship sacrificing who I was to make her happy. Cut good friends out of my life because she didn't like them. Stopped standing up for myself because it wasn't worth the arguments. Worked 10-14 hours a night and still, she abused me for not doing the housework. I genuinely tried. She worked 6 hours a day and rarely did any chores at all. But I wanted to make it work, so I tried to talk to her about my feelings and problems. She called me lazy and played the victim, and every time I let her make me the bad guy. All I wanted was for her to be happy. I never stopped her seeing her friends or doing the things she liked. I never complained when she wasted all our money on her whim of the week. So when she asked if she could hang out with her ex just as friends, I said yes, because I trusted her and I told her as much. I may not trust him, but I trusted her. A few weeks later, I get home at 11 p.m. and she breaks down crying, tells me she cheated on me with him. I was obviously devastated, but I could have forgiven her, could have still tried to move on. But then she gave me the real gut punch. I love you, but I just don't think I'm in love with you anymore. And that was it. I told her to get out. A week later, she came back saying she still loved me. She just wanted me to fight for her. I told her the truth. I will never fight for something that doesn't exist. She said she wasn't in love anymore, so there was nothing to fight for. And if I have to fight another man for your affection, I don't want it. Fast forward 6 months and she calls to say she's pregnant and the guy denies that he's the father. She says she ate up and wants another chance. No, PSA to all the women out there, don't take advantage of a good man. If he's not number one for you, he won't fight for second place. She just kind of fell out of love and broke up with me only to ask me out again the next day. That held for about 2 weeks, after which she broke up with me. It's worth to mention I was in rehab at the time. After that, we stayed in contact until she suddenly blocked me recently without any comment. I was a narcissist, took her for granted, and was mentally abusive. I'm glad she got out when she did and received the help she did after. It's really nice to see her thriving too. I truly love her and it's gutting to see how much I hurt her. Thankfully, losing her really kicked me into gear, and I've been working with a therapist for a while now to turn myself around so I never hurt another person. Hopefully someone similar can see this, realize their mistakes and flaws, and take action before they lose the one they love also. Came back home from work like every single day. She said she wanted to talk, told me she wasn't fulfilled anymore with me and she wants to break up. Bonus point, she told me that she cheated on me few weeks ago. Had 2 days to take all my stuff and leave our apartment. Came back to my father's apartment. End of the story. He told me I was too old. However, he came back saying he just made it up and wanted it to work out. Then on a hunch, I had a friend look and see if she could find him on a dating app. She did. I wasn't upset that he was on an app, it was the fact that he had just updated his picture from the weekend. Called him out and he still hasn't spoken to me about it. Although, he's gonna need to grow some nuts and talk to me because I have his expensive mountain bike at my house. Growing apart, being together a decade, starting from college age, is a gamble. Most people have no clue what they want with their life, nor have they lived at that point. Up until you're 25-35, your taste in everything is still up in the air, and only after that some start to slow down with their change. She went in a different direction than me, and she also had a bigger drive and a better sense of direction than me at the time. I was still kinda aimless and just falling from gymnasium to university to apprenticeships to finally a job when we split. We had discussed and agreed early on neither of us wanted children. At some point, she changed her mind and wanted a child. I realized together we would only build resentment over this in the long run. She deserved to have a child. I deserved not to have a child. We are still close, just haven't been together in years. He tried to decide what clothes I was allowed to buy. They had to be special so I didn't look average. He told me to start going to the gym with him cause I wasn't fit anymore. Bear in mind I was 57 kilograms at the time. He got angry when I didn't. Want to sleep with him at least 4 times a week. Didn't matter if I actually wanted to or not. He wanted to make a schedule for this so his balls wouldn't become blue and hurt. 3 months into our relationship, I kicked the ear out and he tried to threaten me with suicide if I didn't take him back. 1 week later, he had a new girlfriend. 8 years later, I'm still single and haven't dated since. The main cause was IMHO. We were 2 lonely people who shared our loneliness to ease it. There was not much else which bonded us together. That was never spoken out, but retrospectively that was the reason. I couldn't get over her antics of her low self-confidence anymore. I couldn't hear anymore she calling herself ugly and putting herself down, and I was not able to help. Never ever had a fight with my ex. I just thought somehow I could do better since we did not have that often, maybe once every 2 months. I divorced her and I am regretting it every single day. She rightfully moved on and is happily living together with another man. I miss her so much, but I will have to live with that. She said she felt underappreciated. I spent 5 years building a foundation for the rest of our lives, obtaining a master's and full-time position so food would always be on the table, getting a car so we would be mobile and able to travel, getting a flat that we could make into a home. Within the same year of all the accomplishments, between Christmas and New Year's, she sat me down and told me she wanted to end it. That was 2 years ago, and I'm still trying to pick up the pieces. I got tired of being treated like a servant who footed all the bills. Any decision I made thinking of family first. Hers were made her first and only. Then the bipolar schizophrenic episodes kicked in. Paranoia, then false accusations. How do you steal a house? Then violence. Refusing the meds prescribed, so it became a roller coaster. It took the city PD telling me to leave if I had a place to go. I did, and I did. Been almost a year and I am in better health physically, mentally, and emotionally than I have been in the previous decade. Cheated on me and went back with her newly separated previous ex-boyfriend. She left me $4,000 in debt and wedding deposits I never got back, so had to claim as tax write-offs. Got the ring back but sold it for half of what I paid for it. She married her ex and had 2 kids. They divorced 2 years later after kid number 2 was born. Found out she realized he was up to debt and kept losing jobs, and she kept spending money on stupid things. I'm old and have had a few long-term relationships. My most recent ex said no when I proposed. We broke up that night. The relationship I had before that just kind of fizzled. We weren't a good match. We were together for longer than we should have been, and we ended up growing apart pretty massively, I have to say. The relationship I had before that, which is the first I am able to say was my first mature relationship, ended when I realized I didn't love her nearly as much as she loved me. Because I like my men the same way I like my coffee, without A in it. Didn't even find out he was dudes until after the breakup though. I told him to leave because I found his journal entry from the previous year about him being stuck in a relationship with someone he doesn't love. A week before I found it, he was talking about us moving to Florida. Together 5 years, and he didn't care about me at all. He was just using me for a cheap place to live.